Welcome to Around the NFL, presented by Verizon.
The Around the NFL podcast. Punters are people too.
Well, that's an Eisen thing. From the Chris Wessling podcast studio.
What are we doing?
Yeah, what are we doing at this point? With the Zummy drops, where are we at?
Somebody suggested that one. Sounded good. You like punt to celebrate punters?
No, I celebrate kickers.
Graver
it's very
was
different.
probably unaware of the origin of the...
I'm a young lad.
Okay. Rich is the face of the company, you know. From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL. Dan Hanzus, Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler, Colleen, Wolfe. What's up, Connie?
Hey.
Hey, punters are people too. But I think the other thing that's a little jarring is we just witnessed on Monday night a waking nightmare for a place kicker.
Yeah.
Right. There was no punting drama over the weekend in any of the games.
So it's like kickers are people too is really what this is about.
Yeah, I wish I had that drop.
In essence, the opening drop didn't fit the topic of the show. Various topics. It was awkward, and it got us off to a weird start. Thank you, everyone involved.
Welcome to everyone listening. This actually is a show that people enjoy typically, and we're going to try to get this thing back on track here.
Us included.
Yes. How are you, Colleen?
I'm great. I got my club arm here, so.
Colleen was attacked by a vicious dog over Christmas.
Tank the dog got me, and still healing.
And
but I feel like I have a club now that I can hit people with.
And Colleen and I do the same thing as pointedly not asked what became of Tank.
I was going to ask, like, the logical next step is Tank is not existing.
I don't want to know anything
The tank has been
Tank's
decommissioned. Perhaps for the safety of others, but also at the same time, it's something you don't want to think about.
Nope.
We're just happy you're here.
Don't want to know.
With us. Yes, big show today. You know, we have a guest. The New York Giants, they are a relevant football team in the middle of January. Sorry about that, Gregg. So we're going to talk about him some more. Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News will join us.
I mean, my Giants. When the chips are down, the only one who believed in him, my Giants.
Your Giants?
For last week.
How about this week?
I picked them to win, and they didn't. I'm not picking them this week.
I think I will.
That was a short journey, Gregg.
Yeah. I mean,
he's loyal to football.
I think they might cover. I might take them to cover, you know.
All right, so we'll talk to Pat about the Giants and where they're at ahead of their big showdown with the Eagles. Man, I got to say, we kind of thread the needle on Super Wild Card Weekend because no big upsets, but also we got entertaining football for the most part. And what we get out of it now is just a stellar divisional round weekend of matchups. So I like that. That's saucy.
Yeah, there was part of me kind of like rooting for the Dolphins to generate total chaos, but then it's like now 3 days later, I'm glad that they were dismissed and taken care of.
Yeah.
Right. We don't need Miami going to Kansas City in the divisional round.
Well, we got a good slate of games until the last one. That was the one that had nothing to it. And there is something strange about the Monday Night Football wild card game. Like, you've just had this like huge, great meal, essentially, 5 monster games over 2 days, and you're a little, even though it was like the meal was great, you're a little stuffed for dessert. You know what?
You gotta wait around.
The excitement
for it
wasn't
too.
there for what that should have been. Cowboys, Tom Brady, that was supposed to be the
fairness,
even before the game started, and then the game was nothing.
There's been 2 of these now. Last year, the Rams absolutely butchered the Cardinals in a game that was over by the end of the first quarter. And it was kind of similar in this game. We're going to get to that game and the news that's been happening around the league in the last few days. In fact, why don't we dive into it? Let's wrap up. Let's close the door on Super Wild Card Weekend. I'm a good boy. I'm a good corporate boy. With the Cowboys and Bucs from Tampa.
You think they're pulling them offside, maybe? Possibly?
Nope, they're going to run a play. 4th and 4, back to throw it out to the left all alone. Caught at the 2, and a walk-in touchdown for CeeDee Lamb. How did you not cover the second team All-Pro?
Great question. Got to ask Todd Bowles about that. Because CeeDee Lamb did what he wanted to do. Dalton Schultz did what he wanted to do. And most of all, Dak Prescott did what he wanted to do. And I thought a career best performance, 5 touchdowns, no turnovers, as the Cowboys coast past Tom Brady and the Buccaneers 31-14 in what could be, probably not, we'll get to it, Tom Brady's final game. I don't need to have huge conversations about that after last year, but it is part of the storyline coming out of this game. But of course, we start, Colleen, Wolfe, with the Dallas Cowboys. I know you're no Dallas Cowboys fan as a Philly native, but you had to be impressed with a team that looked like it was limping into the postseason, flipped a switch, and kicked some butt.
What a polar opposite performance from last week against Washington. Like, if the Dallas Cowboys can play this way, next week they'll definitely beat the Niners. They have a great shot to do it. They looked so good. Dak was dealing. This was his best game in so long, the first time in 8 games that he didn't have a turnover. The defense was swarming. I mean, him and Dalton Schultz. Like, Dalton Schultz had a great game. He led the team in catches, touchdowns, yards, targets, all of it. But it just seemed like every time he and Dak connected, they were just on a different level. It felt like I was like actually saying out loud, wow, or oh my God, did you see this? Or like looking back, waiting for the replay, not just on the touchdowns, but on some of those completions too, really nice completions. So, I mean, it was a slow start for Dallas, 2 3-and-outs to start the game, and then finally everything turned around. And I mean, even Brett Maher bounced back at the end.
Yeah, that's right. That 4th down touchdown we just heard was partly, maybe largely, because Maher had missed those 4 extra points, and they didn't want to send him out there for a field goal.
He started jogging on the field, and then Zaddy was like, no. We're going to have to ask Dak to bail us out here. And
were you surprised that they waited so long to just go for 2 or to go for it instead of continually sending him out there to miss kicks? Like, I was trying to decide, if you're the head coach, when you're up that big, do you just keep sending him out there to break it? Like, I think
it would have been different if it was a tie game.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
It was tough, and I think he's thinking about next week. This is a guy who's played great all season, Brett Maher, and when you're up that much, you can afford to be like, well, it's 1 point. We'll see. Like, we shouldn't be as surprised how one-sided this was. I had the Cowboys winning because, like, they were a team that over the course of the season scored 20 more touchdowns than their opponent, whereas the Buccaneers were scored 10 less touchdowns than their opponent. The Buccaneers were a bad team all year, but I was on the fence of who's going to win this game. I think most people were, and you see Dak at his best, and it's just like I said this a while ago. He reminds me of Tom Brady more than any of the young generation quarterbacks, although Dak Prescott at this point is the oldest quarterback left in the playoffs by a few years. Patrick Mahomes is next. It is crazy.
Wow.
Because he's going to win before the snap, and he's going to adjust to what you're doing before the snap if he gets a little confused early in the game like he was. He's going to figure it out. He's just smarter than most quarterbacks in terms of being able to make decisions and decide what's going to happen. And like Tom Brady, if you give him time, he's just going to carve you up. And the Bucs never had a pass rush this year. They didn't have an offensive line in this game, so both of their lines were just pathetic. And Dak Prescott was out there cooking pizzas back there on one of those, you do a play action on 3rd down with all these fakes in the red zone where you don't expect to have that much time, and he's just chilling back there for, I think that was his 3rd touchdown. It's like, if you gave Dak that amount of time, he will kill you every time. He's that good.
Yeah, and I think the experience of the Dallas Cowboys, the experience of Dak Prescott and how they're dealt with by us, by everyone, had this happened in week 1, we wouldn't be going back to that week 1 game saying, remember that Dak Prescott's best game of all time. It happened at the most critical mass moment it could for Dallas. And where would we be had he had those 2 3-and-outs, the way the game started, had that continued?
If he had his week 1 performance against the Bucs where he was terrible.
Well, also got injured, so that's a different narrative. But just the way that the Cowboys worked their way out of that after last week's implosion, which they were heavily criticized for rightly, I think that Dak Prescott goes into San Francisco, and so does the whole team, with a completely different mindset and so much pressure off their shoulders compared to the way they went into this game. I think it was just will Dallas implode? Will Mike McCarthy be blamed? Because Mike McCarthy's been blamed for everything other than stuff for Dak. And I just think that for Dallas to go in and absolutely destroy Tampa Bay and to lead Tampa Bay with so many questions. And I know Tom Brady, we know who he is. He's the best of all time. He looked awful last night. That was he was his worst graded PFF performance all season. It looked that way. He looks like someone who doesn't want to get hit. He had 31 incompletions. And for me, it's where does he go next? It's it has to be a perfect situation for Tom Brady because he doesn't raise all the players around him the way he did in previous seasons?
Yes, I think his interception, which, again, this speaks to Tom Brady's greatness. It was his first red zone interception since he's been on the Bucs, and this was the last game of his third season. But yeah, he seems much more vulnerable these days, and I think he's one of those guys, and I think it's going to affect his decision. I think he's coming back, and we'll play some sound from Brady in a moment. But I think he could still play, but he's at the stage now where I think he really does need that great setup around him for things to work. He can't, like Mark said, lift things. And I thought the game kind of turned early in the game after they were going back and forth, 3 and outs. The Tampa Bay has the ball after Dallas gets their first touchdown. Marr misses his first PAT, and they go down the field, 14 plays, 70 yards, and Brady throws a terrible interception. And I don't know, it kind of looked like maybe he was trying to throw it out of bounds, but I don't know. Whatever it was one of his worst passes. You'll see Cowboys take over. They go 15 plays, 80 yards, and, after a miserable goal line attempt by Zeke Elliott, who I agree, by the way, Gregg looks cooked right now. 4th down at the 1-yard line in a 6-0 game that feels like it can go either way. Great naked bootleg call. Dak waltzes into the end zone. And from that point, even after another Marr missed PAT, they had this game under control. So I'm totally with you on that too, Mark. Like, this flips the whole script for Dallas. They now get to go to San Francisco. Last year, San Francisco came to them in the playoffs, and they were expected to win. Now they're not expected to win, and they have some confidence. I think they're going to be a tough out, especially if Dak feeds off this game.
I don't like it.
No.
I don't like it at all.
Well, at least you're not getting them.
Dallas is making me real nervous. I know. So, for me, best case scenario, now I gave you the unbiased Cowboys take at the beginning.
You tried your best,
but
yes.
now, for the Eagles to beat the Giants and then to beat the Cowboys.
Ooh, that would be fun.
To make the Super Bowl and then, beat Doug Peterson and the Jags.
Like, we'll preview, like...
Who you definitely need to get revenge on.
I don't know why, but that's
you have an active sandwich prop that the Eagles will not win a playoff game? I don't know what was going on with you in August, but that's
such Connie as an Eagles fan, though.
I know.
One of the most pessimistic fans I've ever heard.
You're covered either way.
Anymore.
You could either get like a burrito from Tacos Por Favor or the Eagles.
A hypothetical
I do like
burrito.
that. I love burritos.
I don't.
That's a sound drop.
This doesn't change my
Tacos,
feeling
please. That
of
translates to
the
tacos,
Cowboys.
please, by the way.
It doesn't change my feeling about the Cowboys moving forward because I knew they
Really?
were. Or I thought they were one of the 6 teams or so that could win the Super Bowl this year, and they can they played like a top 5 offense and defense very often this year. Not always at the same time, sometimes at the same time. But their ceiling is as high as any team in the NFL. Can they do that 4 straight weeks? I don't know. Can they do that against the worst team in the playoffs? They showed that they can. And I think they could do it next week too. And they might lose that game even if they do it because they're playing a great 49ers team. But it doesn't change to me I know it's the playoffs, and it's massive for them to get over that hump. But the Buccaneers were one of the most consistent teams in the NFL, I thought, this year. We say how the NFL is so unpredictable. This was the same team all year. They managed to have a knack for winning comeback games against awful teams and awful quarterbacks in the fourth quarter, or they would have been a 6-11 team. And so that's what made them more of an 8-9 team. But they were a sub-mediocre offense and a defense that could beat up on some bad teams, but was pretty mediocre itself when it played the good teams. So it doesn't change
I know
how
what you're
I
saying.
feel.
It was good to see this version of them.
Their upside is there. That's what we've seen.
But Connie and I did the Power Rankings podcast. You can check that out today. I had them at 6 going into the wild card round. I have them 6 now. I still think those big 5 teams, the 2 teams in the NFC and the 3 AFC teams, are ahead of them in terms of the pecking order. But when that version of the Cowboys plays, it's very close. They deserve to be in that group.
We know, and you said that this version of Dallas would destroy, I think you said, the Niners, or would...
I didn't say destroy.
Vanquish
I think that they could win.
I thought you were stronger than that, which I like.
She said they'd win. She said they win.
I mean, maybe you're wish casting.
I mean, if Dak does this, if he has 5 touchdowns and a 150 passer rating, I
and no turnovers.
But to the consistency thing, the Niners have been, there have been a couple quarters or drives here or there, but they have been as consistent as any team out there, more so than even Philly, who's got a quarterback with a shoulder situation right now. I don't trust this. I'm with you, Gregg. This doesn't change the way I feel about the Cowboys. I love seeing what they did. I thought it answered a lot of questions about Dak Prescott. But do I think that they're going to – this is just they play pristine. from here on out? Absolutely not.
The Niners have won 11 straight games. Like, they have been streaking for a very long time at this point. But now I feel like the Cowboys are at their peak. And if they can continue, then they can ride that through the playoffs.
They do have a shorter week, too.
I weirdly had like more concerns about their defense coming into this game than their offense. So if there's one thing I do feel better about, it's that they dominated the Bucs offensive line, which really hasn't been that bad this year. And you look at the stats, and it ends up only being 1 sack. But that's why Tom Brady looked so bad last night. You're right, he doesn't want to get hit. He freaks out after he holds it for 2.5 seconds. But it was for good reason. They won basically every snap. There was very few snaps that the Cowboys defensive line, which is what we saw early in the season, weren't winning. And Leighton Vander Esch's return, I thought, was really big for them. He's been great for them. I always think of Wes when old LVE is stepping up, because his career trajectory has been a roller coaster, but he's played really well this season, and his return
Well,
helped.
Wes adored his rookie season, but then he really
Right, him
fell
and
off a
Jalen
cliff
Smith
at some point.
had a thing for a while there. Let's listen to Tom Brady. So Brady, of course, the contract is up in March. He's a free agent. Very interesting to again see what his market will be. The last time this is a real thing was after his last Patriots season, and he had kind of a lukewarm market, and then went to Tampa and was a monster in his first 2 years. His third year, not so much. But first, how does Brady play it with the media after the season's over? This is how he ended his press conference. This was interesting in his comments to reporters there.
I just want to say thank you guys for everything this year. I really appreciate all your effort, and I know it's hard for you guys too. It's hard for us players to make it through, and you guys got a tough job, and I appreciate all that you guys do to cover us and everyone who watches and is a big fan of the sport. We're very grateful for everyone's support, and hopefully, I love this organization. It's a great place to be, and thank you everybody for welcoming me, all you regulars, and just very grateful for the respect, and I hope I gave the same thing back to you guys. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Let's try to do some translation of athlete speak here, Marc Sessler. I think the only thing, first of all,
he gone.
Classy gesture. One, yes, it seemed like maybe a goodbye to the Tampa reporters. The one thing that caught me is when he said, hopefully, and maybe he was going to finish the sentence like, hopefully I'll be back here, but then he stopped himself, purposely kind of leaving things as murky as possible, I think.
Well, I think he's definitely gone because, first of all, I have no doubts that he essentially got Bruce Arians shoved upstairs. I mean, his sticking around was contingent, I think, on Arians leaving. Now you've got Todd Bowles coming off a bad season. I think Byron Leftwich is gone. Like, there's a lot of changes. I don't think Tom Brady after this.
I think there was a report out there that
Pewter
Leftwich
report.
is done.
We had Scott Reynolds on the show. That was the reporter who said Leftwich will be fired.
Well, and I also heard that there was gossip that they were going to get rid of Leftwich during the season too. At some point when things were going real ugly. I mean, why would Tom Brady ever come back to this? He wouldn't. I think he's gonna. There's like the Raiders are out there as an obvious reported concept. I think in a different world, if the Dolphins thought differently about Tua or Tua's health, like the Dolphins kind of fit for Tom Brady. They've courted him before. It's a Shanahan-type system. But the idea that he'd go to the Niners, who have 2 quarterbacks on rookie deals, and I'm not even sure he's even better than Brock Purdy right now, to be honest. I know it's a small sample size. It's like, I don't see that happening. I'm not sure there's a big market for Tom Brady.
Glazer threw that out there, though, and that was telling, I
think it depends, too, where Sean Payton lands, like where he might go.
True.
Interesting.
Yeah, Sean Payton and Tom Brady to Houston. How about that?
With the Patriots.
Brandon Cooks is like, you know what? I'll stay.
It's actually not quite as crazy as like you would think. Vegas makes more sense to me. I thought Brady's reaction though on the field after the game was interesting. He was very generous, I would say, and like in a good mood to other players on the other team. I watched that whole press conference, and it wasn't like the end of the season Brady press conference. He maybe seemed a little relieved. There was a comment from Troy Aikman and Joe Buck who said the people inside the Bucs said over the last 3 weeks he's kind of been back to being the real Brady. Like the cloud and the stuff about that's off the field that even more than you guys don't know about has sort of lifted lately. And I'm not exactly sure what all that's about, but it almost seemed like he was like, okay, this is done here.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not
rough
the end of the
year.
world. I've been through some rough times, but let's move on.
And we don't have to try to dig too deep into like behind the scenes of his life, but he did go through a divorce, and now he is untethered from that standpoint. It would really surprise me to see that the personal life go where it was, and then he steps away and leaves the game. I think he's definitely back. I'd be shocked if he was back. But I guess we'll find out. He made it sound like he was going to take his time before making any announcement.
Can I the taking the time thing? Because it's just then it's suddenly on us to discuss this over and over. Can we just press a button and everyone goes where they go now?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
That
I get it,
so
but it's
nice.
just every find out now.
I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to have another conversation about this until something comes out from him or his camp. That's
like a moratorium on
right.
It has to be
Brady
substantial.
talk.
Unlike Derek Carr, where there's going to be updates because he can and likely will be traded, maybe even before the Super Bowl, kind of like, who is that? Kirk Cousins? Alex Smith, rather, a few years ago, 5 years ago now. There's nothing to update with Brady. He's a free agent, and he can't be franchise tagged.
Okay,
so
can I say
attempt
attempt to stir excitement in me about where Derek Carr goes? I don't care.
All right.
What? It's just it's fill in the blank, average mezzanine level quarterback going to new team.
I love your mezzanine level.
Right, you might be talking about him
So
every
much.
single show when he's the New York Jets quarterback
Right.
for the
I
next
know.
3 years.
I'm kind of hoping not for Dan that happens too, because I don't think it's the solution everyone
But
makes
it's
it out
funny.
to be.
I think he would be good for the Jets, but
I
I don't
know
know why
you-
we're
I
talking
know.
about Derek Carr
Right,
right
I
now.
know we're not.
Talking about Tom Brady, and we'll hit the break by talking about Dak Prescott, who ended the night at a .79 EPA per dropback. That is expected points added per play. That would be good for the 11th best playoff game since 2000.
Wow.
That makes sense. I mean, that was about as close to a perfect
That was
game
from
as
Benjamin
you could get.
Solak via RBS.
Do you some nerd had to go back and do the expected EPOA business?
Are you calling Ben a nerd?
EPA.
Well, no, but
Why-
EPA
why coming after the EPA community?
Because I'm not at all, except that they weren't doing
Right.
that in year 2000. So someone had to go back and mark and
Well, it's
grade
all-
every single game back through
No,
history.
those are just EPA is just
Holy
numbers,
smokes.
so you can just run the numbers. I think True Media does it.
on Cynthia's machine.
There's no PFF is grading. There's objectiveness to subjectiveness to that. EPA is just numbers. You just press the button.
Well, it
get the
sounds
numbers.
You
easy.
just have to
Maybe
run it
we-
through the Gregg machine.
Are you,
basically.
by the way, are you unblocked by Derek Carr?
I never was blocked.
Oh, good. Well, until tonight. His camp.
Never even checked. Never even checked.
What's your
Will not be
situation?
checking.
Oh,
you guys
we've
got
David Carr and Lindsey Rhodes took care of that for us.
Yeah, so it's still.
Brokered a
Are we
piece.
He
still
never
good?
went back on it though. Did you check?
Oh, I don't know.
I just went to look at Derek Carr at Derek Carr, and it said these tweets are protected. Then I realized it's actually Derek Carr QB, and he doesn't follow
good.
me, but
Okay.
we're safe.
All right.
We're good. We're good.
Safe. And I do
good.
I
Happy for
do
you
note
guys.
that David Carr, he's on Twitter. He likes
Sure is.
likes our tweets sometimes. So I do try to keep that in mind if I'm going to fire
I saw him in
anything
the
off
hallway,
about
and he
the
said
Carr
hi to me,
family.
and I said hi to
Yeah,
David back. I'm not. I think
Is he aware of these comments that you've made in this episode?
I hope that he would understand that his role is perilous, and if he's hoping that no one ever critiques his brother, who's a pro quarterback.
You would hope that he understands his brother is a mezzanine level quarterback, according to Marc Sessler.
Well, I don't
I have a
think
show
he,
coming up with him
why
next
would-
week. I could let him know.
Yeah, let him know, please. Let's just keep this afloat.
Let's take a break, and we will hit the news. All right, welcome back. We got the final wild card game out of the way. Here is the schedule, by the way. Saturday, Jacksonville Jaguars at Chiefs, 4:30. Giants at Eagles, 8:15 on Saturday night. Sunday, Bengals at Bills, 3
I'll be
o'clock
there.
Eastern. Yeah,
Oh,
Connie.
yeah.
That's great. And the nightcap of divisional round weekend, the best round of playoffs in the NFL. Cowboys at Niners, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Hamana, 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 hamana. All right.
Wait, so you watch the Eagles in the hotel, or are you going to go to a Buffalo bar?
I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet.
I think
Kyle
that's
Brandt's
something you
going to
gotta
be out
plan out.
there.
You got to go to a Buffalo bar, I think.
I don't know anyone in Buffalo.
Oh, you will by the time that night ends.
I'm just gonna post up at Anchor Bar, I guess.
Yeah. But are you going to be decked out in Philly gear and Eagles gear? How do you play
Yeah.
that?
They don't mind there. What do they care about the Eagles?
There's no cross-pollination. All right, let's do some news.
Oh my God!
Got to be kidding me.
I've never seen anything like it.
Why are we
What's
kicking
going
it?
on?
Why are we kicking it?
What is going? He can't believe it. Talk about a buzzkill. No one's ever missed three extra points in a row. That's
Cut
gotta
a
be a
guy at
record.
halftime of a playoff game?
Gotta be a record.
Payton is so brutal to kickers, as Mike Vanderjack could attest to. That's Eli and Payton on the Manning cast last night, and that was after the third Mar miss. He missed 4.
Which
really
was a
felt for
record.
that
He was the first. He wasn't the first to miss 3. He was the first to miss 4.
I'm so glad he made that.
I know.
Kick.
I don't understand. I don't know how you.
Him to make that kick.
I mean,
what do you
it
do?
cost them 4 points if you really want to put it in
Like, is he their
perspective.
kicker this weekend? Like, are you really going to roll into the divisional round playoffs against the Niners after that happened? I don't think you can.
Oh, do you bring in a brand new kicker?
I
That feels even worse.
I honestly think you have to. I put out the kicker power rankings last night. Postponed, got it out there. Don't worry.
I saw.
And Mark
Good
came in
job.
10th because he had a big time year. So
Wait,
I understand.
before the game or after the game?
Mid-game. But I did note it was based on the regular season only.
Okay.
I
gotta say
He was good during the regular
No,
season.
he was
like,
great
Like
during the
if you're doing
regular
an
season.
NFL Now hit on the kicker power rankings, they're like, all right, Dan, I've seen that Mar has dropped 18 spots this week to 28.
You don't even have him on a team. I would keep him. I mean, his overall body of work.
Yeah,
and you
but what
trust
happens
that
when he
can-
misses his first kick in the first quarter?
I think that, that was such a Wesism that kickers mentally become so derailed, and we've seen it with so many of them. But I don't know what the better option is right now with the guys
Carry
out
a
in the
second
street.
kicker. I know nobody. It's
Maybe.
weird. I've talked about this before. Like, for a position that's so valuable, teams never leave themselves any safety net. There's no backup.
No, it's like a cornerback that
Well, that's
kicked in
because
like high
if they
school or
do
something.
tryouts, like the 35th best kicker available isn't great, but there's like a 50% chance he'll be about the same as Maher.
But the yips
Or
are
close.
the yips, and it's all sports. But the kicker is really, in football, obviously the most obvious case of yips. That's where it comes from. Like, when that happens, it was hard to watch. Like, from a human standpoint, you felt so badly for the guy.
Except for Peyton Manning.
And Peyton doesn't care.
Ruthless.
He
He
does
has
not
no
care.
heart.
Although he cares about the game. I flipped it in the third quarter just because the game was so bad and they had Dan Campbell on, and I watched that part, like the third quarter. They're so they're living and dying at 24-0 about a bad play that the Bucs made, and I'm just like, I love that they're.
What else are they going to do?
I know.
I mean,
but
they're getting paid to be into the game, but
yeah, but like
I don't doubt that they aren't net organically. If that's,
I think he just seems like hurt when like a safety makes a big mistake or a quarterback makes a big mistake
cares
in a way
so
that like
much.
most announcers are not that into the game, not that into.
So would you cut him? Would you cut Maher?
I would have to. I mean, they know him as well. I would think you would have to take a look at him in practice and see what happens. But either way, it
you
is
could
a
keep
huge,
him on the team, put him on the inactive list, and sign another kicker.
It's a shame that you can't
They've
like
done that
bring in a
before. They've
kicker
done that
day
before.
of without letting him know that this has been done behind the scenes.
It's a huge roll of the dice. Either way,
That's a
either
huge
way,
mind
they
game,
are.
too.
I mean, everything kind of is on the back burner. Jason Peters also got hurt in that game, which is causing their line to be shuffled again. But I think that is the biggest thing that's hanging over this team, and it's a shame because everything else was beautiful for Dallas in that game. All right,
Can't all be great.
you love it. By the way, Eli said during the Manning cast that he promised and he vowed to himself that he would never go back to the terrible city of Philadelphia. His words, I'm paraphrasing, after he retired from football, but he said he will be going to the playoff game, and he's expecting a record amount of double birds.
The
Keep it classy,
reception.
Colleen.
Reception's going to be great for him. I can't wait.
All right, the reception for Sean Payton is saucy across the football landscape. The former Saints coach is hot and in demand. Payton was on The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Did I say that right? And he was setting to meet. Wait, what is it?
Colin Cowherd.
Like Coward?
I don't think he would even produce it.
But they put you on that path by calling it The Herd.
They do. They absolutely do. But it's Colin Cowherd basically.
You want to do a take two?
The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Did I get it that time?
That's fine.
Anyway, Payton said he was going to meet with the Texans, the Broncos, the Panthers. ESPN's Adam Schefter said the Broncos interview will take place Tuesday in L.A. The Panthers meeting is set for Friday. And Greggy, they completed an interview with Payton on Monday, and he added Payton, he's very open about this in the public, that he absolutely would take the Texans job.
I appreciated him being on and the fact that this is an unprecedented story. But I don't love the idea, and I've seen this, that oh, he's being so honest, and so open and transparent. It's like, no. Everything he's saying is incredibly calculated, and a lot of it is holding the Saints over a barrel. He is essentially doing these interviews to send messages to the teams he's talking to, including the Texans. He mentioned David Tepper by name multiple times and really sounded pretty intrigued by the Panthers.
No, he didn't.
If you just listen to that, you would think he liked the Panthers' job the best.
Stupid.
But I also think that might be related to driving the price up because they're the division rival of the Saints. But he also threw out the draft compensation, which is like boxing Mickey Loomis into a corner. And then he's also saying that, hey, the price is going to go down a lot next year if I don't pick a team this year in terms of draft compensation. So that's something you got to keep in mind.
He's an analyst now as well.
So what he's doing is saying, Mickey, don't F me here. And this is a guy that was supposed to be a friend of his and the Saints. And I think it's all fascinating. I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong, but it's certainly unprecedented. And I really thought it was funny him talking about the AFC South and that he likes the Texans job. I think in part because Bill Parcells used to you take the team at the bottom, and then you're the hero when they go up, and I can be the boss here in Houston. And I think he also looks at the AFC South, and he thinks it's trash.
You're in a division that you can at least look at and say, all right, Indy, Tennessee, Jacksonville is nothing. But you can at least, all right, how do we? So I think there's.
Wow. You actually see the smoke coming out of his ears.
Their 2 or 3 wins that they had this year.
The gears are turning I need to pivot out of this point that I was making that the whole division sucks.
He stalled out twice on that drive.
That's good. You know what, Greg? I see, and you love this stuff. It's all the game within the game. I mean, he's playing the game.
I know,
he is the I don't play chess, but let's say whatever. He's like the kingmaker here. He gets the opportunity to dictate how this plays out. The Saints, they have to be passive and see how it plays out themselves. But it's Payton, because of his standing in the league, that is going to be able to dictate how this goes.
Absolutely.
And he's playing the game, and he knows how to play it. He's a savvy guy.
He's not going to go somewhere, I don't think, that doesn't have a set quarterback situation
he
or
said that.
capital to get one.
Well, all 3 of these don't.
Yeah,
he keeps saying the quarterback doesn't matter. It's about ownership and the structure, that we didn't have a quarterback when they got to New Orleans.
He did talk about the fact that the Saints and Texans had multiple years where they practiced in the preseason against each other in scrimmage, and he went out of his way to compliment the Cal McNair family in Houston, which surprised me because I think of that as one of the lower tiered ownership situations out there. But in terms of getting a quarterback, in terms of having a ton of draft picks for years to come, and a roster that has some good young players on it as well, I kind of think the Texans make more sense than anyone else chasing them. The Broncos make 0 sense to me on any level. You're saddled with a quarterback who maybe can't play anymore. I mean, everything we saw this year says is that. Right. Carolina, I guess David Tepper completely won over Matt Rule, and those two mind melded when they met, and then it went apart. And David Tepper's not been able to get the quarterback he wants veteran-wise year after year. Where's their quarterback coming from?
They keep hearing, and Sean Payton said so, that they'll get a mid to late round draft pick. So it wouldn't be the number 2 overall pick. So you go to the Texans, you can take a quarterback number 2. And away you go.
I think you're completely set in Houston.
In other Sean news, Sean McVay, he ain't ready to leave the sidelines in Los Angeles. NFL Network insiders Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo reported on Friday that McVay intends to return as the Rams coach after taking a few days to consider his future. The team then announced the news. McVay is figuring out his coaching staff. But after a 5-12 season where it looked very much like he was headed out the door, Mark, he instead is coming on back.
Yeah, I don't know why we needed to have all the reporting and the drama around it. I mean, it's just how this thing works at this point. I always thought Sean McVay was not into the concept of a Rams team that was flatlining and needed to rebuild, and I thought maybe Matthew Stafford would have a similar viewpoint. They're both coming back, but there's a lot of work you need to do on the Rams, I think. It starts with a Bengals-esque offseason rebuilding of your line, because what's fixed there? What's different? I mean, they're top-heavy. You have no draft picks. I think the future is bleak if you don't find a way to continue to trade for players and mortgage the future even further down the road.
I'm just what happened in those couple of days? Because he talked to the media on Monday. You said you don't like the process, but it only is happening because Sean McVay is talking about it.
Well, so why does he need to tell us all this? when he did.
But then they were like, okay, he's going to go away for 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks are crucial. He spoke on Monday, sounded very tired. By Wednesday, we heard it's coming by the end of the week, and it happened on Thursday. So it's not like he got away.
He probably just didn't want to hear about it anymore. He already knew his answers, so he wanted to shut everyone up about it.
Yeah, I guess, but he's the only reason we're talking about it. We don't talk about this with any other coach. It's because I think he's an open guy with a lot of people, and he just was expressing ambivalence.
I always thought this story and some of the reporting around the story was always a little bit weird, and that's and I took some fire on this in social media. Like when I mentioned that he mentioned the war in Ukraine and his wife, obviously that's a way more serious situation than anything that's going on in the NFL, and I just was a little bit taken aback by that being involved and mentioned with the other very normal football things that he was facing at that time. And I wondered the sincerity of the entire plot line that was unfurling, whether this was something he was really struggling with or whether he was looking for a way out. The fact that he's coming back it makes me think, okay, I think maybe this is a more sincere thing, and it was something he struggled with, and now he's back. So that's kind of my thoughts on it and where I've been coming to. The story in general, the fact that it ends up right back where he was surprises me.
I almost think he's so open and honest, and the fact that he hasn't been in this situation before while he's been coaching, just on a team that has struggled this much, he's probably getting a totally different line of questioning at this point too. So it's just kind of uncharted territory for him, and probably an area that he's learned from maybe to not be as open in the future.
He was, but he's being open off the record. It's an interesting capital J journo question. It was when the primary source is not always a reliable source. I believe everything that happened the whole time, that all this was happening in his head because he didn't know. And he's just going through all this and he's speaking about it openly. And whereas someone like Sean Payton, for instance, is very calculated. I don't think he's being honest. So it's which do you want? I don't really know.
And then the part of the story that was hey, go, hey, coaching staff, go look for other jobs. It's cool. And then 2 days later, he's back. That's interesting.
I mean, maybe he's just trying to fire everyone.
Story.
I don't know.
The thing is, there could be seven coaches going through the same taxing end-of-year process where the losing and the time, and you're probably separated from your family so much. It's unhealthy. I did this one article at one time, but the coaches that go away for a year. And
was it a long form?
It was a long form.
Bring him back.
Oh my God,
Mark, you are a wordsmith.
No, it is. Just go read that one. How about that? But their health across the board completely changes. They still are with team doctors. Everything about their physical body improves. They go away and they watch football from a global bird's eye view. And Mike McCarthy went through that, epiphany or whatever it was, which I didn't buy at the time. But Mike McCarthy, the one we're getting today, is
where he got the PFF subscription or whatever.
Well, no, I don't know. It's a Tom Pelissero long form.
There should be a built-in sabbatical for everyone that works at the NFL.
Wait,
yes, that's sort of what I'm getting to.
All right, maybe this is the next Sessler long form. Here's a theory. I'll just throw it out here. I just thought of it. McVay's younger. He's in Colleen's age bracket, firmly in the millennial category.
Right. I will take it.
Maybe the millennials, that's part of you're more open about your feelings. You're a little more out there than Bill Parcells was 30 years ago, where you don't share anything about your inner thought process. You just, disappear from one job, reappear a couple of years later. I think maybe
feels unhealthy.
And then get trash talked by Mike Westhoff when you join the Around the NFL podcast 25 years later.
We're a generation of open people now.
I love that.
Things have changed on that front.
Very good. Do you have any other big millennial takes you want to share?
Well,
you know what? I'll let you prepare for that. That's going to be an off-season show. Connie the Millennial. I also I wrote this down. I forgot to mention. Picture it on a a cloth napkin, like a fancy restaurant, then in red lipstick, scrawled "Pigskin Gossip" with Marc Sessler.
I mean, I would adore that segment. I don't know where the lipstick's coming from.
I like that on a cocktail napkin.
Yeah, cocktail.
That's it. Next to a cocktail.
Just workshopping it.
Because you mentioned gossip later. Usually it's more like reports. And you went gossip, and I thought, ooh, there's something there.
With some chatter that I heard. Yeah.
Okay.
In
other news, another Sean in the coach ranks. No, his name's Jim. Jim Harbaugh to remain as head coach of the University of Michigan. 2 weeks ago, he said he expected to remain with the Wolverines, and now this is good. Eric Edholm
happens every year?
Yeah, I mean, this is just another third version of this tedious,
But
concept.
I like it that they had to have a big announcement that said he's staying, which is basically an announcement that everything he had been saying the last week or two actually was meaningless and lies. But this time, it is for real.
Yeah, Eric Edholm, who does really good stuff for us. He's the lead draft writer for NFL.com, wrote the article on it. And in the lead, he says that he stuck to his word, Harbaugh did, even with a few NFL franchises expressing interest in prying him away. That wasn't kind of the reporting that we heard out of Charlotte with the Panthers, where it was almost a courtesy interview he got. However, the 59-year-old was believed to be one of the Broncos' prime candidates for their head coaching job. He also had ties to other jobs, including the Colts. But in the end, don't you get the feeling, Greggy, and I think you do, because I think you already made comments about it, that if a team really wanted Harbaugh, he would be back by now?
Oh, absolutely. He just didn't get a job. He was one of the people in the mix for the Broncos job. He couldn't close it quickly or anything. I don't think they were giving him any signs that he was, going to get that job. They said, we're going to have a process for another couple weeks. And, so he tried to get a job. No one gave him a job.
He didn't want to lose out to Sean Payton.
No, I wonder how he interviews, because I thought I liked covering him back in the day, because he's one of the more bizarre guys up on the podium you'll find. And, these coaching interviews, which we never are privy to, maybe if he's already got this great high-paying job that they want him around for the next decade plus, do you ultra prep for that, or you just roll in saying I'm Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah,
and that might not be enough.
And that's been a while now. It's been a while since he's been an NFL coach now.
The one thing I thought that was kind of interesting about the statement that was released, it was the Michigan president that put it out, saying that Jim shared with me the great news that he's going to remain as the head coach of the Wolverines, blah, blah, blah. This is fantastic news that I have communicated to our athletic director.
Oh, good. Ward Manuel.
Yes, and there are a lot of people who are like, well, wait a second. Why are you breaking the news? Why are you telling the athletic director? Shouldn't the athletic director be in the mix on this? So I don't know.
Around the Big Ten.
In other news, offensive coordinators out the door. Chargers have fired Joe Lombardi. Listen, heads are going to roll. When you blow a 27-0 lead in a playoff game, heads are going to roll. And I think Jim Trotter nailed it in his speculation reporting on Twitter a couple days ago. Everything about this franchise pointed to them keeping Brandon Staley, who's under contract for multiple years, and bringing him back after a 10-win season. But somebody's got to go, so it is the offensive coordinator. And the same thing happened, and we haven't hit this, so I'll connect these two stories. The Jets collapsed down the stretch. Ownership didn't want to make a change at head coach. But somebody's got to go. Someone's got to pay for it. So Mike LaFleur, their offensive coordinator, gets fired. So two OCs out the door, and both of those AFC teams looking for one.
I see them as different situations, because I think there's connective tissue with Joe Lombardi de-emphasizing the magic of Justin Herbert all season long in parts of it's like that. This wasn't just about this one game. Yet you're right that you got to find a scapegoat for what happened, and they did. Mike LaFleur got saddled with a totally failed draft pick, Joe Flacco, and hot and cold Mike White. It's like it's a tougher situation. I'd like to see, we do this with quarterbacks and coaches. Give me Mike LaFleur with Justin Herbert, and I think we're getting a different offensive coordinator.
The Herbert heads would be excited. I'd be excited. They have a stat on PFF called perfectly covered plays, where basically every player in coverage, doesn't make a mistake. And the Bucs and the Chargers, of all the playoff teams this weekend, almost doubled every other offense out there, which tracks when you watch it. When you watch this Chargers offense, they could also use someone that doesn't run a 5.0 40. That is the slowest group of receivers when Mike Williams is not on the field. And even Mike Williams isn't a burner.
Yeah. Go ahead, Colleen.
Justin Herbert, it's just this second season for him. I was listening to the last show that you guys had. What was that? Was that the recap show?
Yeah.
And you were talking about the Herbert Hive.
Thank you.
And about Justin Herbert, if you're going to take one of those two quarterbacks that were on the field to move on with, you would have taken Trevor Lawrence, because he just looked like a more dominant player, a more dominant quarterback. And I feel like we've seen Justin Herbert take a step back. His numbers regressed as well this season. So if Brandon Staley's not going to go, then obviously the offensive coordinator has to.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you guys on LaFleur with the Jets. Maybe you give him Derek Carr or Lamar Jackson and give him another chance. But I think, not that the Washington Post had it right about the head coach, but I think Woody Johnson, their owner, was putting his beak in a little bit and was like, hey, something's got to change here. And Saleh made the decision. I'm not going to walk the plank. So Mike does, my buddy.
The way Saleh talked, it sounded like he didn't make a decision, which is another sign of a dysfunctional organization. Like,
stop trying to spin it.
I mean,
you already tried it before the end of the regular
season.
There's
no spinning. Like, you obviously aren't happy with how the Jets ownership has handled things. Like, let Saleh be a head coach.
I'm just saying, I think maybe it's subconscious. You want the Jets to be dysfunctional still. I don't think
I think
now
it's conscious.
I don't think it's a dysfunctional organization right now.
I think the owner making a coach fire a guy
but
he didn't want to fire.
But you're speculating that.
Based on Saleh's comments
because
and having
want it to be
watched
true.
the league. And
just like you wanted him to fire the head coach.
Yeah, but do you think that,
and the people covering the Jets are all saying the exact same thing.
Do you not think, though, that probably Brandon Staley was put into the same position? These coaches are loyal to their assistants, and
maybe
Joe Lombardi wasn't.
Lombardi to me was gonna be fired. I think, barring a Super Bowl run.
I think that was an appropriate move-on situation. I'm just not sure that Staley came up with the concept.
And I am not
himself.
defending Woody Johnson, and at all. But let's not act like ownership. They own the team. I think there are a lot of teams, successful ones too, where they have a voice. I mean, look at Robert Kraft. It doesn't mean it's necessarily dysfunctional. Let's see what happens.
I'm trusting Robert Saleh's judgment.
Oh, you had a conversation with him? What else did he say?
Wow.
I just sit back and listen when this happens.
Does Mike LaFleur end up with
You haven't
Sean
been
McVay?
this mad since I said that hiring Gase after
Right.
McCagnon or whatever was dysfunctional.
You could see that.
bounced right off. Nice try.
LaFleur and Sean McVay.
Can you imagine living with me?
Yeah.
Cardinals hire Titans executive Monti Ossenfort as general manager. I think the most notable thing about him is he looks like a cross between Steve Keim and Nick Shook.
All right, let me dial in on this.
Anybody else have any other takes?
A young.
Look, you can even see the headshot of Shook with Ossenfort in the NFL.com
kind of like a young
article.
Keim when Keim was hired, so he's basically a replacement.
Just kind of see his hand right now.
Another freaking Patriots, offshoot, who was in Tennessee for a long time, and that's where he kind of made his name more. But all he talked about was Kraft and Belichick, and it makes you think about Brian Flores maybe as a potential candidate.
Marc Sessler. Oh, Digger chimes in. What's up, buddy?
I just wanted to comment. I don't know if you guys saw this. It just happened pretty recently. One of his first comments in the press conference was, "Ego will not be tolerated in this organization." Is that a Kyler Murray subtweet, or what is going on there?
Graver, you go organization?
Organization. What's the other way?
What's Canada like?
Organization. An organization.
An organization.
Yeah, your
organization to me sounds like I'm organizing my desk.
Also, what is the team based out of Jacksonville?
The Jaguars.
Jaguars.
I don't get that.
I got for that for a little bit.
What is up with that?
I think maybe Jessica's accent is having some influence.
Is it a Jessica situation?
No, I would never blame her for anything.
Hey, is Jessica going to join us at the live show from the Bourbon Room tomorrow night, Wednesday in Hollywood?
She will be there.
Yeah, she will.
Yeah.
How about that?
That'll be fun.
That's cool.
Good for you.
I feel uncomfortable.
Why? What makes you feel uncomfortable?
I don't know.
The Browns. Cessy. The Browns are hiring Jim Schwartz as their new defensive coordinator. Jimmy Schwartz, the former Detroit Lions head coach who has also won a ring with Connie's Philadelphia Eagles.
That's right.
As DC, he's been successful in his career, and now he replaces Joe Woods, the embattled Joe Woods.
I think it's a great hire.
Nice.
The one thing that kind of would concern me is that you're hiring someone that might be seen more of a head coach than your actual head coach if things go off the rails early next season.
Got him.
Well, it's nice to connect the current Browns with Mark's favorite iteration of the Browns. Maybe not favorite, the Bill Belichick Browns and Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, he was. That's
There's
true.
going to be a
He's coming
lot
back
of
to his roots.
wide nine talk in Cleveland.
Yeah. How about a little Belichick letters? The Marc Sessler long form.
Again, it's already been written. You can go read that if it's
How about-
still available
All
on
right,
our
how about this?
website. Is it still available on our website? That would be the question.
Mark, you know I'm an ideas man.
Yeah.
How about the Schwartz letters? The Schwartz letters.
A 49-year-old man writes letters to a 56-year-old football coach. I think that's a little strange.
The Schwartz letters. Anyway, that by the way,
he would not write me back. And if he email, it would be a whole different thing. We'd be texting to each other.
And the weird thing about that segment,
modern day story. Yeah.
You know what the weird thing about that segment would be, and that show on our network we're launching, that's also in lipstick on a cocktail napkin.
Well, there's a lot to unpack.
A martini glass is just taken away to reveal the message.
All right, and finally, the beacon of functionality, the New England Patriots, they're looking for an offensive coordinator. Bill O'Brien, old Billy O.B., the top target. You like that?
I would like that. I thought it was interesting they released a statement saying, we're trying to keep Gerard Mayo. We're going to have interviews for offensive coordinators. It was a level of transparency and a sign that Kraft is trying to do some public outreach after noticing some of those empty seats at the end of the season.
Bill Belichick, the only coach he ever hired that he hadn't worked with before, because this is Bill O'Brien, you're just playing the hits if you bring back Bill O'Brien.
Right.
But listen,
you're right.
I don't know what's going on. But Greg Schiano was the only one, and he didn't even
make
it to the season.
Look up to see if Mark was still alive there for my laptop.
I nearly fell out of my chair. Did not get a lot of sleep last night. The voice is in and out.
Me either.
Yeah. Well, the rain
neither did
stopped.
I, actually.
The rain stopped. It's like it was nice when it was raining in L.A.
Dasher was barking nonstop at 12:30.
I could hear that.
Very
that was
weird.
Annoying. Yeah.
Interesting. There you go. That's what's happening in the news. All right, we'll be right back, and then Pat Leonard of the Daily News talks to the Shiva. And now joining us from the Daily News, it is a man who's covered the New York Giants for 7 years now, and it probably hasn't always been the most glorious gig, but it doesn't feel that way anymore. It is Pat Leonard. Pat, welcome to Around the NFL, and welcome to relevant January football in the New York Giants.
Dan, thank you. Thank you, fellas, for having me on. It's been a while, as you know, and it's fun to watch competent, winning football and roster construction, frankly. Even on the back end, you're looking at them and you're like, wow, not only is this a real NFL team again, but they might be able to build something sustainable down the road.
Yeah, we were talking before we went on live here that, in the ATN era, which we're navel gazers by our nature, we started in 2013. Other than some endless Eli Manning, is he good? Is he bad? Will he retire? Will he get benched conversation? The Giants have kind of been on the back burner, and as fans are annoyed as well. I'm a Jets fan, so there's always plenty of Jets talk, maybe not as much Giants talk. So here we are now, and after that big win this weekend against the Vikings, it's going to be really interesting, isn't it, Pat, to see how they react now against an Eagles team. The last time we saw them, week 15, we don't really count the week 18 game. Come on. It was 48-22 with Jalen Hurts, as you wrote in your column this week, staying into that game, late into the game. Did that rub the Giants the wrong way, the way the Eagles handled that game at MetLife?
Yeah, they noticed it. They hate the Eagles. And I know that rivalries are a well-known thing when we talk about the NFL and division matchups, but this one's nasty. And the Eagles have gotten the better of the Giants in every which way. When the Giants beat the Eagles finally, they've lost 11 of the last 13 in this series. They haven't won at Lincoln Financial Field since 2013, I think. 5 field goals from Josh Brown that day, by the way. Boom. And yeah, exactly. And when they beat them with Joe Judge as head coach, I mean, the amount of not vitriol, but emotion behind the scenes, just finally getting the Eagles back. But it obviously hasn't been enough. The Eagles have won a Super Bowl more recently than the Giants, even though they have 4. And they have just owned this head-to-head series. They pantsed the Giants front office a couple years ago in the draft, trading over them to draft Devontae Smith, who the Giants were eyeing there in that draft. Obviously, they end up trading back, getting Kadarius Toney and a first-rounder that becomes Evan Neal. We'll see where that goes. But just, then you had the Nate Sudfeld coming in and keeping the Giants out of the playoffs. So there is so much on the Giants' minds going into this game from an organizational standpoint, from an ownership standpoint, from a front office standpoint. The players are going to play the game. But when you look at that 48-22 blowout and the fact that Hurts played so deep into it and they were throwing the ball late, running big plays and gashing the Giants defense, yeah, they noticed and they'll remember it.
I just wonder how they match up physically with them, because like, yeah, you're upset that the Eagles are pouring it on, but it's because they got bullied. And that felt like a bit of a turning point. The Eagles season wasn't quite as pristine after that. And certainly I've come around. I thought the Giants were very lucky for most of the season. And I think they've played their best football the last 3 or 4 weeks. But how do you just think they match up physically? Because I look at, that's where the Eagles, to me, separate themselves up front on the offensive line and the defensive line.
No, Greg, I think you're absolutely right. You look at the Vikings, right? Kevin O'Connell did a lot of good things as a coach, but one thing he did to play into the Giants' hands was he didn't run the ball on 3rd and 4th and short. Kept spreading it 5 wide, and that plays into Wink Martindale's hands. He can scheme up pressures. The Giants were giving up 4, 8, 11, 7 yards rushing to Cook on these carries. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles. If the Giants don't stop the run, guess what the Eagles are going to do? They're going to keep running the ball and knock them back, and they're not going to stop. You know, Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, the Giants killer. That matchup for the Giants is not in their favor. And I will say this too. After that 48-22 game, I've been covering this team. This is my 7th season. They've been bad for a while, but I have never heard a Giants team admit so readily and honestly after a game that they were clearly inferior to their opponent than after that game. And it was so strange to me at the time, because even though they were just being honest and they were correct, you're looking at the standings and you're saying they could meet that. They're meeting them again in week 18. They can meet them in the playoffs. And here's Daniel Jones saying flat out, this was proof that we're not where we need to be yet. So can the Giants finally and suddenly get to where they need to be to beat that same Eagles team that just demolished them at MetLife Stadium in a month? I mean, there's a reason this game is a 7-point spread, even though the Giants obviously put a lot of good football on the field in Minnesota.
You know, like Dan and I grew up right around Giants country, watching the Giants. And I mean, we go back to like the Bill Parcells days where Giants-Eagles was a legitimate rivalry. And you know how it is when a team stinks up the joint for a decade plus. These rivalries, you can call them that, but they melt away. And I would just ask this, because I think this is such a huge moment for Danny Dimes. Like what we saw in the last game and the way he's developed, if he were ever to go and out-duel Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, suddenly everything we think about him and everything that we think and thought about the Giants completely transforms. And I just wonder, has this Daniel Jones, do you think in the last couple seasons been there all along? It's just that Brian Daboll came in and, I don't know what a quarterback whisperer really is. We throw that term around, but is this a Brian Daboll effect, or is Daniel Jones finally surrounded by healthy players? He himself is healthy, but I see a different player in the last couple months than in years past, a completely transformed quarterback.
Yeah, well said. I do think it's both. I think the coaching is the biggest change. And certainly I know for a fact that previous staffs, or particularly when Jason Garrett was the offensive coordinator, the Giants were coming off, really the main goal was to stop turning the ball over for Daniel Jones. And so combined with what Garrett already is known for offensively, there was a huge focus on protecting Daniel from himself. And so if you're doing that with a quarterback, you're never going to fully unleash him. And also, whether you're doing it overtly or not, it's going to seep in that you don't have full confidence in his decision-making and his ability to push the ball down the field. So I think chicken and the egg there with some of those things, but it kind of breeded a lot of, even if he was not turning the ball over in games, they were low scoring and there was a low margin for error. I will say this, Daboll and Mike Kafka and Joe Schoen, when they came in, they didn't profess a ton of confidence in Daniel Jones coming in. And so even from the inside, they put pressure, I felt, on him to kind of show them. And at the start of the year, if you look at tape of their first couple games and tape of their recent games, this has been an evolution of him earning their trust. And so the other side of it is Daniel's dual threat skills have been there. We know that he can run, but as he made the plays and protected the ball while making them early in the year in targeted spots, Daboll and Kafka slowly pushed a little bit more onto his plate, to the point where you're watching games like that Colts blowout, where Daniel's running ability is the center point of the offense, or in Minnesota where it's his running and it's his arm. And let's just face it, guys, forever now, especially since they drafted Barkley, they have been a team that we need to run the ball with Saquon and supplement it with Daniel.
All right, it's time for the moment of the week presented by NFL All Day. Oh, so many great choices in Super Wildcard Weekend. Mark, what's yours?
Well, it's just Brock Purdy, the whole thing. And I think if we lived in a simpler, less convoluted.
So like a moment in time.
Just the Brock Purdy experience, because I think it's almost like there's so much coming at us with the NFL all day long, every day, and life in general that's like, this is slipping through the cracks a little bit. I feel like it's just like, oh yeah, Brock Purdy, this rookie is playing great. It's like, this has never happened in the NFL ever this way. And like their offense is better with a guy that literally every team decided they didn't want to draft until the last person available. And it was like, the salary he's playing on is absurd compared to other quarterbacks. They've got an incredibly weird situation in a good way going into next year. But where this journey is taking us, we thought they could go off a cliff. He could end up being the Super Bowl MVP. This is the biggest sports story around.
I feel like he's getting an appropriate level of attention.
Not
too much or not too little. Right at the right level. That doesn't make for good, talk show bits, but just like
I remember on this show when Carson Wentz blew out his knee, we talked about the Eagle season being over with Nick Foles. I remember just weeks ago was having a similar conversation about the Niners after they lost their second starting quarterback, and yet. How about you, Greg?
Well, I never thought the Giants season was going to end last week, and I believe in the G-Man. And I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley's go-ahead
You're so stupid.
touchdown. What a moment. Okay, the reason I wanted to pick this, too, is because this was amazing, him running over Dalvin Tomlinson, and Saquon Barkley hasn't had these sort of big-time moments in a playoff atmosphere where the whole country's watching. It was running over a 320-pound guy who, by the way, used to be his teammate, another former first-round pick of the Giants. And it was after that fourth down call by Brian Daboll. So maybe, you don't think of that right away when Barkley is. But I think about it. Daboll with the cojones to go for it.
Greg, you sudden, furious Giants fan. Are they beating the Eagles?
We'll see.
No,
that's not an answer.
Are you picking them to beat the Eagles?
Earlier on the show today, I said no. So I would think you would remember what I said. But I might take him to cover.
I think it was to reemphasize what you said about that.
You don't sound confident.
Cover. What does that mean?
It means a lot.
It's incredible to certain people in the desert and surrounding territories. Barkley was a different dude in that game. And if that's the same guy shows up against Philly, watch out, Connie. How about you?
I know it. Okay. I'm going to stay in the division because a lot of NFC East action.
The moment of the week.
Of
all the great moments that occurred in the NFL Super Wildcard Weekend, what is your moment of the week?
This was so easy for me. Guys, it was not Brett Maher's first missed extra point. It was not his second. It was not his third. It was not his fourth. It was not a historic meltdown happening for the Cowboys kicker. No. It was Brett Maher rising from the ashes to make his fifth try, the extra point right here. He finally makes the kick. And that right there is the moment of the week.
I enjoy it.
And yet ESPN almost missed it. They were stuck in the
replay. Come on, that was at that point the only thing I cared about the game.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait.
I love it because
wait to watch.
Dan thought it was the Scorpion Woman being cruel, but that would be if she picked one of the missed kicks. You're just being a generous, loving soul.
I would like you
story
to
for me.
Bring that level of snark to Brett Maher's mom.
Mars? Brett Maher?
Yeah.
Maher.
Maher's mom.
That actually tracks back to her. She is a mother and she's a her.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
There you go.
That was my moment of the week,
device.
what Mark just said.
That's unbelievable. All right.
We're still taping this?
That is the moment of the week presented by NFL All Day. Thank you for watching always. And check in with us later in the week with more great NFL content. Heed the call.